It's been so long, my microphone is dusty. Back in the game, Nina, with Nina Khoo. Good morning. How are you today?
I'm fine. I'm delighted. I've walked my dog, very happy to be here with you.
Yeah, good, good. So we are here, Nina and I, me being Mi Elfverson, I'm the founder of EyeStorm Women. We had a chat at our meeting a couple of days ago, and we just got this sense that people are quite overwhelmed at the moment in general, our community and some of our customers, and also ourselves. So we decided to do a little talk around that. Nina being, yeah, tell us what kind of coach you are, Nina.
So I call myself a sensitive leadership coach. So I'm an NLP master practitioner, and I specialize in supporting highly sensitive women who are in positions of leadership.
Good. So we're going to hear more about that, and you have a lot of information about that if anyone is interested that they can read up on. So we're going to share the links. And even if you're not familiar with it, or if you think that I'm not a highly sensitive person, I think you should actually. You have a little test, don't you? You got a.
Yes, so I've got my own sensitive leadership assessment tool for people who suspect they might be sensitive. But of course, there is Dr. Elaine Aron's self-test to ascertain whether you are highly sensitive or not.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I think you should do that, whoever you are looking at this, and see where you are, and if nothing else, to understand people who might be highly sensitive people. And I'm not really, I have to say, I'm not personally really into these, putting people in specific compartments or pigeonhole people and getting stuck with a title that we done in a test with a combination of are you an introvert or are you an extrovert and all of that, because I actually do believe that our brain is developed. We know that the brain is developing all the time and we can change, and also life changes us, and I think that you can be a little bit set when you are just locking yourself into something like that, and then I'm an introvert, so I'm not going to do this in general. So I'm not really keen to put people in that sort of set um, uh, with a title, but the highly sensitive people, I really do see that it can be super helpful to people. And also I realize that I am one. I'm like the Uber HSP. So it's really good to have some advice and tools to know how to navigate it a bit better. So today's chat is about overwhelm, and we're going to talk about what happens to us or how we get pushed into overwhelm ourselves, and also share what we do then, or what we would like to do if possible. And Nina, you are of course going to share some of your professional tools for how to deal with things, and I'm going to share my personal from experience tools and all the learning I've had on the way. So shall we get started?
Yes, let's.
Okay. So Nina, can I ask you first then, can you tell me one thing that pushes you into feeling overwhelmed?
Mm. So interestingly, what you said about being highly sensitive, it's a temperament trait. Your brain is wired differently, and your highly responsive nervous system is more responsive than people who aren't highly sensitive. And this is why overwhelm is so crucial to understand and to manage if you're a highly sensitive person, because you're more prone to overwhelm. So this is my hot topic really, but one of the things that I have to be absolutely conscious of is to not take on too much. So I'm multi-passionate, multi-curious. I love doing lots of things. I love learning, doing different training courses. I say yes to far too many things for many different reasons. And so when I'm starting to get overwhelmed, I need to take a step back and think, okay, have I just said yes to one too many things? And what do I need to do? What do I need to gracefully decline for now? And what do I really want to focus my attention on? So really being clear of what is important to me, and in a sort of attached to this as well is, am I people pleasing by saying yes to too many things? Or am I doing this course because my coach told me to do it, but really I don't want to, but I'm doing it because I think it's right to do because she said so? it's like really tuning in and learning, is this right for me? So it's like check in with yourself. Are you taking on too much? Do you need to say no gracefully to certain things?
Yeah, absolutely. All of that resonates with me, and it's one of my 5 tips that I've lined up. What pushes me into overwhelm? It's actually down on number 4, but it is a mixture into everything. Um, and I think that when we are taking on too much, our brains can only take so much. There's a division of our brains sometimes. I actually feel that when for example, when I'm filming and people ask me to take still photographers or stills during a shoot and do both, it's almost 2 different parts of my brain that kick in. And then you need to have that chit chat going as well and take in what people are saying. And I can't really do that. I'm in a technical brain. I'm looking at exposure and I'm looking at light and I'm looking or focus and what's going on behind the person and what they are saying if they have lipstick on their teeth. And then I can't do the chitty chatty bit, or I can't do these 2 things. So when we are jumping between events and different things that we do and listening into completely different types of people, we're learning with 1 hour we're learning and then we're jumping into a networking event. It's high pressure on the brain, isn't it?
For sure.
My advice is just like you, that you got to select, you got to know your capacity. First of all, you need to know how much you can handle, and there are so many invites and so much going on both in real life and online as well. So for me, I think one Zoom event a week, one evening event a week, meeting one person for a coffee a week is enough, because you can hear already it's adding up to quite a bit. And apart from doing your job, you also need to have mind space. You need to have quiet time, because it's when we stop, when we really let our brain rest and our body rest, that's when the creativity spark happens. That's when the creative spark happens, when we are starting to feel inside ourselves, when those subconscious thoughts and needs start popping up. I usually liken it to a fizzy drink, right? When we open up the can of Coke or of a fizzy drink, the lid, everything goes all fizzy and all these bubbles are playing in our head. Whereas after a while, it kind of settles. Some people liken it by a glass where you have sand. So, if you shake that glass of water with sand in, and then suddenly, gently, it just lands on the bottom of the glass, and the water becomes clearer and clearer. And that's how I feel our brains work when we do take that break. And that's why meditation is so good for us, or going for a walk, or doing these exercises that really gives us space, mind space. So yeah, don't overwhelm yourself with too many events. Set your boundaries. I think another thing that is, for me, that is overwhelming is because I travel a lot and I'm away and I might be with a client somewhere else for a week. What happens is that I'm losing my routines, right? My habits and routines. It's quite hard to keep them up. And that means that I'm going to be losing a bit of control. And I hate that. I hate messiness, clutteriness, if that's a word, clutter, and being out of control. So I want to have a firm grip of things. I want to have systems. I want to have processes. I want to have protocols, right? And I need everyone to follow those. And if they don't, if anyone goes outside them, God forbid, then I'm going to be like, oh, whoa, what's going on here? That's not what we decided. But of course, I'm very aware of my sensitivity within this. So I need to manage myself and my expectations around this, and having the flexibility around it, but knowing what the minimum need is for feeling good, for not going into overwhelm. I have to, maybe you have to get up a certain time to manage to do those things before the world wakes up, or you have to have a certain type. I work with Google Sheets a lot because I need to have an overview. I like boxes and colors. I'm very visual in that way. So I need to have printouts sometimes that I can physically, take my pen on a paper and tick off or highlight. And that's how I work. Maybe that's not how other people work, but you need to acknowledge how you work the best in that respect and make sure that you cater for that. So is that something that resonates with you?
Yeah, yeah, all of that. I love how you describe that you're very honest about your need for control, because that's one of the crucial things for highly sensitive people as well. Because when we feel in control, we feel safe. And to feel safe is our primary reason for existing. So anyway, I loved all of that. And also picking up on something you said, it's like making sure that you have time in between the things that you're doing. So that's one of my top tips as well, is I always get so overwhelmed if I'm looking at my calendar and I've got back-to-back meetings, and that just looking at it overwhelms me, let alone doing it. So what I've started to do is just to block out time. So I block out chunks of time some days. So I've tried to reinstate I don't work on Fridays. I'll go and dance with my friends and have coffee. And that's just my day of relaxation and rest, because I need spaciousness in order for my busy brain to be able to be calm enough to focus on things. And if I don't have spaciousness, that's when I get really overwhelmed and almost I can shut down and nothing gets done. So I've learned to block out time. So if I have a meeting, I don't schedule another meeting back to back, and I've learned to actually block that time out. So if people have a link to my diary, they can't physically book that time anyway. So that's been a real game changer for me, is to actually make sure I have one day in the week, in the working week, that is mine, because I have a family, I have children, I have a husband, so weekends are for them. But I need a day in the week for me where I recalibrate my nervous system and deal with all the overwhelm, and just that spaciousness is crucial for me. So block out time in your calendar.
Absolutely. And I think in one way, you're living the dream for many people to be able to take Friday off. That's my aim as well. That's a day that I can, I mean, I love what I do. So I end up maybe writing or doing some things like that on a Friday, but I don't want to do any client work, preferably on Fridays. And also having an admin day. So I fully appreciate that people can't take Fridays off and do admin days on Mondays. But if you are self-employed, if you are flexible, the goal for many is actually to have that Monday as an admin day and Friday off, and then you work your ass off 3 days a week. You got to bunch things together. You need to work smart. So be more clever about when you book people in. If you are working one-to-one, see if you can do group things instead, or do online training or whatever it means to you to work a bit smarter. So that's really, really good. And just gaining control and knowing your routines, and also knowing your Can you say that word for me, please, Nils? I can't even spell
Priorities.
it. Priorities. Prioritize. Prioritize.
Prioritize.
Yeah, we're practicing that. So this is very much about what we do in my training program. So the whiz, it's all about knowing your priorities for the month, for the year, for your life, for your year, for your month, and also for every single week. Knowing your priorities, having a priority sheet that you put, your top priority and the other ones, and what's going to help you actually manage to do or handle those priorities. And if you didn't, you got to check back on that as well, right? So if it didn't happen, why was that? What stopped you from doing it? Was it too much to ask from yourself, or did they just not get done because you prioritized other things that weren't essential? So that's really important to constantly have that and tick it off. And I love having my to-do list, and I more than anything I love to cross out things on my to-do list. And I hate when I forget to put something on the to-do list so I can't cross it out when I've done it. Sometimes I put it in there just so I can cross it out. It's very, very satisfying, isn't it?
Whatever works for you.
Exactly, right? So what's another thing that can push you into overwhelm?
So it's leading on a bit from what we were saying. It's like, of course, not everybody can do Monday admin days and Friday days off. And for me, they're loose things. So even though I like structure, a little bit of loose structure, I'm quite a maverick and I like to sort of stretch the boundaries and do things at different times. And life happens. So, just because I try and have Fridays off, I still end up working some Fridays, maybe, but not the whole day, just maybe in the afternoon. So it's like having that loose structure, which brings me on to another tip, progress, not perfection, which is a wonderful mantra from the business coach Marie Forleo. And when I heard this mantra, I just really loved it because as a highly sensitive person, again, we tend towards perfectionism because we have these brains that notice things that other people don't. And so we're noticing all the small things that could be done. It could be done differently, could be done better. And we can, quite frankly, drive ourselves crazy aiming for this perfectionism, which, nothing ever gets to be perfect. So the mantra progress, not perfection, is so helpful for me, especially when I start going to overwhelm and I might be writing an article or a document and spending hours on it. And I think, actually, no, progress, not perfection, it's done. And that's the other thing. Done is better than not. So rather than spending hours on trying to make something perfect and then being disappointed and never actually getting it out there, just let go of the perfectionism and go, you know what? I've done my best. I've got the message across. Let's put it out, and then I can improve on it the next time. So remember that progress, not perfection. It's a real game changer.
Absolutely. I love that, Nina. That is so important. And we see it so often with people who are setting up their businesses. They keep studying, they keep learning, they keep refining things, and their website is constantly in progress and changing, and the wording and everything. There comes a point when you need to say, right, this is enough, this is good enough, as you say. And we need to move on and actually do our job as well. And it's interesting when you look at the traits of a successful entrepreneur. And I don't really like talking about too much about entrepreneurs because I think it's such a kind of cliche trend phrase. Almost over it now, hopefully. But anyway, if you're setting up your own business, if you are making progress, if you're looking to be a productive person and have a successful business, whatever that means to you, um, adapt adaptivity and flexibility and being agile are some of the most crucial foundations for being or running a successful business. And we saw this during the pandemic. If nothing else, it was proof of that concept because everyone just have to do the classic pivot that we learned about during the pandemic and the lockdown. We had to look at how we could manage it in a completely new and different way, some of us. So, of course, we can have set days and we can have set times, but we also need to be open to what comes in our way. That could be a fantastic opportunity, not to be missed. But also learning what is an opportunity or what is just something, that is shiny, shiny, bling, bling that is looking nice, and then it's actually really expensive and not for us. So another thing that I find is important is to what I call being in the right room. And this is when we want to be somewhere, we get all these invites, right, to events of all different types and with all different businesses and people and different environments. And we can't just do it all. We have to set a stop on how much we take on and make sure that we are in the right room with the right people. So if you are in the wrong room, what does that mean then? Well, it means that it can be overwhelming. You are out of your depth, or they're out of their depth, or you're not getting satisfaction from, you're not learning anything, you're not developing, it's not leading to anything. You're literally just wasting your time. And if you go to an in-person event, it's going to take you, maybe an hour to prepare and get there. And then it's an hour or two or three to be there. And then another hour before you're back home. That's half your day gone on something that's not going to generate anything, not even joy for you. So you've got to be very selective. You've got to find the right room for you and make sure that it's value for you to be in that room.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that probably leads on to another tip I have, which is be aware that, well, especially most people, but especially highly sensitive people need alone time. So if you find that, you've had enough of peopling, that you've been going to these in-person events or you've had these Zoom meetings and you're feeling exhausted and drained, just be aware that you do need to recharge. So don't be afraid of, again, blocking time out, or going for a walk, just having that time alone for you because it's very stimulating to be in meetings or events. And if we don't take that alone time to recharge and recalibrate, and we keep pushing ourselves, that's when it can lead to sort of illness and burnout. So really take care of yourself and be aware of your need for alone time.
And I think one thing that can happen is that, say you have an event in town or in city, you go to London or wherever it is, Bristol, Birmingham, for an event, you bunch other things together on that day, right? So we go to not only one event, we make it two or three or even four, and then we stay on in the evening because there's something going on, or we schedule it around an evening event. By the time we meet people for each of these events, we're going to be drained, we're going to be stressed, we're going to come across as strained and stressed. So we have to think about, what contribute. I find it difficult to speak today, Nina. I did wake up at 2:50, so that's part of the overwhelm, right? Woke up at 2:50 and then fell asleep about
Oh
4:15,
no.
and then I woke up at 8 again. So anyway, we can manage, we can do this. But that's exactly what happens, right? You're
Yeah.
drained and then you can't speak. And how's that going to look for other people who've never met you? You know? So you got to be careful that you are a good representative of your own brand, if you're a brand and what you want to be about. So yeah, important stuff. Do
Mhm.
you have any other things that pushes you into overwhelm, and how that does that look?
Oh, yes, lots of things. I think a lot of it is, and we have touched on this, it's priorities. Am I taking things like it's noticing you need to start noticing your patterns. Am I taking on too much? Am I doing things because it's what all the gurus or all the people are saying I should do? Or is that really going to work for me? And also, if you do have a family and you're running your business, it's like you feel torn very often. It's like, where are my priorities? So it's about being really, really honest with yourself. And I've had to do this for myself, and I've had to admit to myself, do you know what? My business is up there, and it sounds terrible to admit this, but it's almost as important, if not more important, than my family. And it's just one of those things. And I've had various different, we talked about profiling earlier, and you're not keen on profiling, but certainly, in my profiles that I'm quite career driven and my passion and my purpose and my work, because it's not just work for me, it is my passion and purpose, is very important to me. That's not to say I don't love my family and I wouldn't do anything for them, but it does mean that, there's an incredible event coming up that's related to my work and it's on the weekend. I might go and do that. And then I will sort of spend time with my family some other time. So it's about getting really honest with yourself. Because if you're trying to be everything to everyone because you feel that's the way you need to live your life, you're going to end up burnt out and stressed and exhausted and having a nervous breakdown, and then you're no good to anyone. So that comes back again to the self-care. So, first of all, know yourself, be honest about your priorities and what really is important to you, and then manage your self-care. Really, that has to be an absolute priority. Self-care is number one because if you are not at the top of your game, if you're not healthy, if you're not firing on all cylinders and looking after yourself, you can't be any good in your business. And if you have a family, you can't be any good in your family. So it's always self-care. So know your priorities and make self-care your number one priority as well.
See, I really agree with that. And I think that some people who hear you say that might be a little bit shocked, to be honest. How can you prioritize your business more than your family? And we understand that you love your family a lot, and it's not, and they probably fine. Um, but this is also the women's role in society for so many years. We haven't been allowed to prioritize anything else apart from our family. We have had to be there for them constantly, prevented from doing other things that we are passionate about. And I think we're living in a time here in the Western world where we need to actually show up as examples that we also need to prioritize ourselves. Have the me time, have the self-care days. And I absolutely would go to an event on the weekend. I'm not in the same situation as you are, but um, my mentality is that we need to prioritize that just as well as a man should be, going to a meeting or
Mhm.
flying to Geneva for a conference or something. Why shouldn't you do that? It's
Yeah.
absolutely ridiculous to think that women shouldn't do that, as long as obviously the rest of the family is safe.
Hmm.
But I do think that
Absolutely.
we also this is to do with boundaries, and as women, as mothers, we have a tendency to be reactive a lot of the time. We take things out of the hands of our children and our family. We do it for them, and it's actually really counterproductive. This is one of my favorite, go-to. It's almost become a pet hate for me to see a woman who step in before someone else has had time to do anything, and it's so unnecessary, and it is counterproductive in the way that you're actually not teaching other people to do it themselves. So if you do it all for your children and for your husband, how are they ever want to have, how are they going to take the incentives and do it themselves and be inspired to do things themselves? So sit back a little bit more, literally. Don't fly up when something goes wrong. Expect the person who dropped the glass of water or wine or coffee or whatever it may be, to take the first step and sort it. And when you're out with other people, you also have to think about how they perceive it, because it can actually feel a bit intimidating to some people if you step forward and do things for them. It can look as if you don't trust them, or that you think that you do it in a better way. Even though it comes from kindness most of the time, you have to actually consider how it feels for that other people when you take over. So that's being proactive instead of reactive, and sometimes just sitting back to do nothing, because it's actually going to get more results in the long run. What do you think to that?
Oh, I love that. That's my highly sensitive brain is going in so many different directions there, but absolutely agree. And I find myself doing that. And it's that whole perfectionism thing that kicks in for
Of
me. It's
course.
like, I'm gonna clean the kitchen so much better than them. So I'll do it because if I let them do it, I'm still going to be doing it afterwards anyway. So, but it's like learning to sit back and go, do you know what? I can live with a slightly dirty kitchen after they've done it because otherwise I'm just creating a rod for my own back. So yeah, absolutely agree with that. Um,
And
yeah.
also budging in um, can sometimes, if you are a highly sensitive person and other people, want to get involved, that in itself can create a situation where you can't think. And if that happens again and again, and if you grow up in that environment and you're never allowed to think actively, what am I supposed to do in this situation, before someone else comes and tells you how to do it, or they do it for you, then you are going to be repressed in that way for many, many years, potentially, thinking that I'm not fast enough, I'm not brainy enough, I don't know how to handle a situation. And then when anything comes up, you're going to go like, oh, who's going to save me? Who's going to resolve this? Because I clearly won't
Yeah.
be able to do it.
Yeah, yes. And then you're setting your children up or whoever for a lifetime of needing to do coaching and therapy to get over that. So yeah, it's
Mm.
a really good point.
And your boys to choose a woman who cooks for them and cleans for them, right? Like we've always done.
And then we're perpetuating these societal problems, aren't we? Yeah, yeah,
Exactly. All right. From a business perspective, also, I wanted to add that when you are feeling overwhelmed, if it's a constant, if it's happening too much, you really need to look at what you outsource to other people. If that overwhelm isn't leading to you making a living or earning enough to outsource things, then you're clearly doing something slightly wrong, right? All your hard work, if you're constantly working, needs to lead to an income that supports you to outsource things. And if you can't do that, then you've got to work smarter. So it might sound harsh. And of course, there's a startup period for a lot of people. But if you're not generating anything from all your hard work, then you've got to think, why am I working? What's the purpose of it? What is it leading towards? What's my goal with this? And just try and work. And that might not have to be the exact smart work term that we apply in business, which is helpful, which is, I have to write it down so I remember it. But it means being specific, make things measurable so you see the outcome, achievable. So you're not setting, your goals way up in the cloud, pink clouds. Be realistic about it and make it time bound. So that's SMART, smart. That's the SMART goals. Because if you don't have a time limit for seeing, before what's my deadline for making this work? What's the timeline, and what is, how much do I need to get back from this? Then, it is going to be that messy feeling where you are actually not feeling fulfilled as well. So outsource things that can be saving you time and actually money in the long run.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. So I have a wonderful virtual assistant, and ever since she's come on board, even though, I was thinking I can't really afford her, but oh my God, I wouldn't do without her now because she does all the things that I never used to do consistently, and she just does them. So it makes such a difference.
Yeah, I read it's actually a Swedish book I'm reading, and the grandmother was an author, and we hear this from, Virginia Woolf and other authors of modern times as well, and a lot of quotes, but I think we are still stuck in the shame of having help at home. For the domestic tasks, and having a cleaner in some countries is really, really shamey. But I do think that the domestic tasks, they're not going to do much for you if you are a person who feels productive, who is interested in having a career or a business. But then what's wrong with getting a cleaner just as well as getting a VA? You make your choices. If it just brings down your energy, if you hate cleaning, if you're the only one who does it, well, then people might have to contribute to that cleaner doing it instead. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it can lift a lot of weight from both your shoulders and literally from your workload. So have a think about what areas where you could benefit from having help. Another thing is slowing down. I'm very fast. When there's something that I do out of habit or things I know, I'm incredibly fast. I can put something together in 10 minutes. That takes a week for other people. And I'm not bragging. I'm just saying that we are all different. But this also leads to me taking on too much because I think I can set up a new website in 3 hours, or even a landing page or an event or something. And then I expect everyone else to work at that speed. Whereas if you're working with corporate, or if you're working with, charities or other organizations or even normal people, you're going to have to expect that they have, budget limits. They have a lot of other people who need to get involved to make decisions. They have their, calendars and schedules set for another year or 2 years ahead. And that for me is something that is really frustrating because I want everything to happen within 2 minutes sharp. So slowing down, accepting that everything doesn't have to happen today or tomorrow, or even next week. Have a bigger plan, work long term, and see how things can fit in long term, and planning ahead so you don't think of something if you're very productive. Oh, we got to do this now, but spacing it out and making sure that you allow for people to work with that time span. So the team we have now, they know I've told them very clearly, I want things done today or yesterday, but you need to have your boundaries around that and tell me, yes, I can do that next Thursday or in a month. If a month doesn't work for what we're doing, then we need to reconsider how we can work with that. Is this person the right person for my team? Or am I not doing the right thing to allow that to work? So, yeah, I think that slowing down process is essential, and knowing, again, going back to your priorities and knowing what needs to happen when, and how urgent is it really. I get people calling me, can you do a photo shoot tomorrow? I was like, no, I can't, but I can do it on the 26th of April. And they go like, okay. And you wonder, what was the urgency about tomorrow then? Why haven't you given yourself the time to prepare for this? And yeah, we're all different.
Mm. Which brings me on to one of my top tips for women, especially, is to remember that we have cycles, even if we're, menopausal or postmenopausal, we still have a cycle that is based on a 28 to 35 day cycle. And this is our hormonal cycle. And so, we're, as women, we're all aware of our cycles and how at different times of the month we want to do different things, or we prefer to do different things, or some things are easier at different times of the month. And that is actually the case. So you'll have times of the month where you're feeling more like, I want to be out there, I want to make videos, I want to meet lots of people. And you'll have other times of the month when you're like, no, I just want to, you know, be under my duvet watching TV and eating chocolate or something. And it's a genuine thing that we do fluctuate according to the time of the month. And that's not a bad thing. That is the way we are created. But the problems come because we live in a world, especially our Western world, where we live on a 24-hour basis. It's a 24-hour cycle. So, you get up in the morning, you go to work, you come home, you have dinner, you go to bed, then you get up in the morning and you rinse and repeat every day on a 24-hour cycle. And it won't surprise you to know that the 24-hour cycle is the male hormonal cycle. So women are pretzeling ourselves into a cycle that actually doesn't work for us. And so what Mi was saying there, made me think of this. It's like, think of times where it's easier for you to do certain things, because I know sometimes when I need to sit down and write my newsletter or write an article or a blog or something, I'll put it off and I'll put it off and I'll put it off, and it just doesn't get done. And it's almost like I have to hit the right point in my cycle where that's the right time for me to be doing things like that. So, I might have to do some research to do that. I might need to actually have the time to sit down and write it and compose my thoughts and structure what I'm writing. I can't do that just at the drop of a hat. I have to find the right time for me. And then it's also about learning this, being accepting that you have this cycle, paying attention to where you are in the cycle, and then batching tasks that are similar. So, it's like, okay, I know at this point of the month, that's when I like being out there and meeting lots of people. If you can, do that, plan your meetings, plan your networking around that time of the month. Now, I know realistically we can't always do this because we can't make the world fit into our cycle. But once you start to become aware that you do have this cycle and that your energy levels will fluctuate and the types of things that you can do more easily at different times of the month, that's actually a fact, then start working with that, Otherwise, um, you're sort of, as there's this lovely metaphor as Kate Northrup, who is the person I learned all of this from. She's like, you're paddling upstream with a canoe if you're not, going with your cycle. So quite literally, go with your flow and pay more attention to what feels right at which times for you. And then things become so much easier and you become less overwhelmed.
Perfect. Yeah. I think that there are, again, with different traits, and some people, they can just do anything at any time. And I certainly can't. And that's why, and it's often in my head, but it has an impact. So for me, it's absolutely impossible to pay bills on a, Friday morning, for example. I'm making things up a little bit here. And that's why I have Monday mornings for admin and paying bills. I love sitting in my bed writing. That's my creative space. So I often spend a lot of time in the bed in the morning, especially on Saturdays and Sundays. That's when I feel that's the place and time where I feel more creative, and that's where it happens. If you ask me to write a blog in the middle of my week, it might not be as inspired because I'm not in that frame of mind. So, yeah, working out when you're the best. And I personally feel that I was probably a bear in my previous life because I just want to go into hibernation during December, January, February, slowly waking up. But I do think that historically, people, especially here up in the north, where we've been for a long time, we haven't been able to do much during the winter month. It's too cold. We have to save our energy, literally, to survive. It gets dark, and then if you only have a candle, what are you going to do? You go to bed, right?
Mhm.
So I think that we've almost got it in our DNA now that winter months we slow down. We should be almost hibernating. So don't overdo those months. If you feel that, you have to respect that you might not have the same energy levels, and then we wake up in the spring and have 1,000 things going again. Brilliant stuff. Okay, something I want to mention, and something that can feel very overwhelming. And I actually go through phases with this when I feel more overwhelmed, and that's news and social media. So at the moment, I can't stop reading about Trump. I just find it absolutely fascinating. I mean, it's petrifying, but it is also fascinating, the whole psychology of it, and everything that comes out of the US at the moment, and also what's happening in Europe due to all this, which for me is really scary, but also very fascinating. So at certain times I can't take too much in. I have to be really careful with what I read, when I read, what time of the day, and how much, and also what news sources I choose to get my news from. So I have a system of that for myself that works for myself. But I think that a lot of people they take in too much and more than they can handle, and you feel that they're just depressed and really scared at the moment. So you need to filter a lot of things, and also constantly, if you're on social media a lot, if you're reading those instant updates, you have to actually go and fact check, because it's just astonishing how much bullshit literally comes up on your screen, and we tend to buy it far too quickly. So being really careful with what you listen into, and analyze what's the background for this. Where are these people coming from? What's their ulterior motive for this? It might be a very political specific financial gains motive behind a post, and then you've got to be aware of that. So always fact check. Don't share things before you know what you're talking about. You don't respond to things instantly with emotions. You've got to go and think first. Otherwise, you are just fueling the whole spiral of fear mongering and false information out there. So I think that is something we all have to be very, very careful with at the moment.
Yeah, it's scary. And then that adds to the overwhelm because if we are absorbing the news and we're not being as diligent as you are at fact checking and, really analyzing it, it can just feel so overwhelming. And then it's like you kind of almost end up thinking, well, what's the point? The world is going to combust in a ball of flame. But which brings me on to one of my top tips, which I learnt a long time ago when I first learnt that I was highly sensitive. So it's really from a lady who works with highly sensitive children, but I find that this works with big, highly sensitive children, the adults as well. So it's like always thinking about your overwhelm and your nervous system as a bucket. So it's like this metaphor of a bucket and thinking, okay, so if I'm reading all this social media news and I've got all this work to do, and then I've got, this event going on, all of these things go into your bucket. And so it's like noticing how full is my bucket? And even the environment that you're in is like, do I have horrible buzzing noises? Is it noisy outside? Is it too hot? Is it too cold? Paying attention to the temperature. Am I uncomfortable? Or am I thirsty? It's like paying attention to your body as well. all of these things, however small or seemingly insignificant, will go into your bucket. And so it's always noticing if you're feeling or you're feeling you're about to get overwhelmed, it's like taking a step back, tuning in and going, how full is my bucket? And what do I need to either take out of my bucket or what do I need to empty my bucket? So it's a great gauge or a calibration tool. So if somebody comes along and says, hey, can you do this X, Y, and Z for me? And you think, yeah, I'd love to. Take a moment, check in with your bucket and go, oh, actually, if I do that, my bucket's going to overflow and I'm going to be overwhelmed. So it's just a really lovely, simple analogy to always think, okay, how full is my bucket? How much capacity do I have to take things in? Should I stop reading the news? Yeah. So it's like you use the bucket analogy. It really is helpful.
Perfect. You really hit the nail on the head there, and actually automatically leading me into my next overwhelm and tip on that. And this wasn't planned, Nina, was it? It was actually all coming naturally here in our flow. And that is my bucket, which is slightly different, but I agree completely with it's all tied together. But one of the things that affect me a lot, among a lot of other things, like the heat and like constantly going to the thermostat and putting up and down the heat now when in the winter and it's cold outside and hot inside and then it's too hot. But it's because I've got histamine intolerance, so food affects me very much. And there is this analogy of a bucket in within the histamine intolerance community, because you can eat certain things to a certain level and then your body starts to physically react. So you got to be very careful, and you can have small amounts, but as soon as you go over a certain limit, and it's different for all people, unfortunately. But if you want to know more about histamine intolerance, I am going to do another webinar on that because it's been life-changing finding out about it. And to manage that is really important if you're affected. And I think it's connected to other disorders as well, and a lot. And it kind of just hit the roof when I went into menopause as well. So it's been a few very hard years where it's taken a lot of effort to understand how it works. But this for me means that having too much alcohol or sugar, or, for me, it's things like vinegar and the odd things that are actually considered superfood, which is avocado and spinach, banana, seeds, soy products. I can't have those. To understand that and actually accept that this for me is not superfood, it's actually really dangerous food for me. It's quite hard, and that's why you again have to think for yourself. If people are saying online, there's some guru coming out saying like, oh, you should eat raw, or you should do this and that and the other, and for me that would just kill my guts and I would be literally sick from it. um, you need to eat more lemon or citrus because it's antibiotic or anti-inflammatory. Yeah, but I wouldn't be able to speak in 2 days and I'll go down with the flu. So we're all different, and you've got to find out what works for you and what doesn't work for you. So that bucket comes into the food you're eating, and I see that a lot of people who are anxious and then they have a lot of alcohol in the evening to soothe that. It spirals into a vicious circle. And you eat sweets to soothe yourself or to calm yourself, and that's just going to escalate everything. You can't have cookies and chocolate and sugar in your coffee or tea. You can't go to the coffee shops and get a massive tub of sweetened milkshake, because it's going to put you into this really aggressive physical mode where your brain isn't functioning. You can't think clearly. It
Mhm.
actually affects our thought process as we get anxious. So you got to know what you can handle and what you can't handle. There's a reason for our parents and generations saying you can't have sugar, for breakfast, right? We used to get Saturday sweets. That was the only time of the week that you could have sugar. Um, so really think through how and when and what you eat and know what works for you.
Yeah, that's so, so true. And I think with shame, oh my goodness, my girls eating cereal in the mornings, that's so bad for them. But they're teenagers. They don't listen to me at the moment, but there we go. Which brings me on to the last tip that I want to share because I know I'm loving this and I know we could go on for hours,
Yeah.
but let's not overwhelm everybody. But it's about tuning into your body. Especially if we're highly sensitive, we live so much in our brain because we have these supercomputers in our brains, in our heads. It's like remembering that you have a body, which follows on so beautifully from what you were saying. It's like, know what's right for you, what's right for your body. But you only know that by tuning in and listening to your body and its signals. But if you are feeling overwhelmed, it's then again, it's taking a moment to just really, even closing your eyes and just tuning in. Okay, I'm feeling overwhelmed. What is that feeling for me? Because we all experience overwhelm differently. Some of us might have a full, busy brain. I know my shoulders tend to gravitate up towards my ears and my chest starts to constrict. And I feel really tight in the chest, which affects my breathing. So it's like, tune into your body and what is overwhelm like for me? What is happening in my body? And then do what it is you need to do. So for me, I know it's about sitting, letting my shoulders drop, allowing my breath to come through, breathing. And once we start, something so simple, once we start getting more oxygen to our brains, that helps. We can start feeling calmer and then the overwhelm starts to dissipate. But you might experience it differently. Overwhelm might be a sick feeling in your stomach. And then what is it you need to do? Do you need to change what you're thinking about? Do you actually physically need to go and have something to eat? Do you need to have more water? So really pay attention to how you are experiencing overwhelm in your body, and then do whatever little things you can do to start shifting that because your body will really thank you for it. And that's going to help stop that overwhelm feeling as well.
Which leads me very, very nicely into my last most important thing of all, really, to do, which is to get out and breathe, exercise, get some fresh air. Just, cut out on the computer time, which is really difficult. But if you are sitting in front of a computer all day, don't go onto your phone and start scrolling, meaningless shit. Sorry. Get out instead. Take the time. It might be cold, it might be raining, but you got to get out. We're not meant to be living in front of a computer, sitting on a chair. It's really bad for us. Make sure that you do something that you really enjoy. So I know you go dancing, don't you, Nina?
Yeah.
I love cycling and swimming, and I do yoga, and I don't do running very happily. So I have to, cycle instead, or have to do the yoga to keep my body loves yoga. For other people, it might not work or it might not be enough. Um, but find the level and what type of exercise you enjoy, because we got to move. We know that so well, all of us.
Yeah.
And still, especially in the winter, it's so hard to get out there and do things. I went out for a walk yesterday and it was just absolutely freaking freezing, but it was beautiful still. It was nice, and your mind clears, your head, you get that head space we were talking about earlier, and you bump into people, real people, and you can chat. So it's so important to have something that you can do, and that's about boundaries as well, both with yourself and the family. Nope, I got my yoga session this here and there, and again thinking through, maybe it's better for you to go 7:30 in the morning or 9 o'clock, depending on what you do. Maybe that taking that time out of your working day is going to generate more and
Mhm.
helping you to be more productive, rather than you feeling like, oh, I couldn't possibly do that. That's absolutely impossible. So think through, what's your exercise form? How are you going to do it? And how and when is it going to happen?
Wonderful. Thank you. It's such a great reminder for me as well, me. Thank you for
Oh,
that.
you got a dog. You have to get out.
Yeah, I do, come rain or shine, but sometimes I try and palm it off onto, delegate it to other people. But yeah, I need to make it more of a priority that no matter what, it's for him, but it's also for me. So yeah, thank you for that one.
Great. And maybe you can put in some responsibility and task sharing there in the calendar for the other family members. So it's not just you, but I think it sounds like a very, very good excuse to get out. So that sounds good. I'd love to meet your dog one day.
You will.
Mm. Anything else you wanted to mention, Nina, around overwhelm and what we can do about it?
Well, yeah, there's like endless things we can do, but I think for me, with my work with highly sensitive people, I talk a lot about what works for highly sensitive people, but ultimately, as a sensitive person, we're the canaries in the coal mine. So the things that work for us work for everybody else as well, but we just need to do them sooner and more urgently than others. So it's always remembering that, if you are overloaded, if you have got a busy brain, you've got a lot going on, remember that you have a body and always tune back into your body because that's going to really help deal with any overwhelm. And so those are the key things. Priorities, progress, not perfection. Um, Acknowledging the way you're wired, acknowledge your need for alone time, for spending time in nature, just letting the cortisol dissipate from our systems because we live in a place in a world that is so fast paced and it's not natural for human beings to live like this. So it's do what you can to keep yourself well and healthy and make that a priority.
Mm. I think you just gave us the physiological explanation of it all there, didn't you? We got to get rid of it. We got to do things to calm our bodies down.
Yeah.
So that's really, really good advice for all of us, Nina. And it's so interesting what you do. So I think that we are just going to give a little plug on how people can find us if they want to work more with us around this. So for me, it's the Wiz for Women, the online visibility program for women in business, where we work with weekly accountability and prioritize. I still can't say the word, and then I teach it. Priorities, and also becoming more confident and go out there and be more visible and be your brand, more aligned with your brand. So if you want to join a fantastic group of women, supportive women, and myself, then have a look at the Wiz. You can find it on the EyeStorm website, which is eyestorm.org.uk, or just DM me. And of course, Nina Khoo is participating as a coach with what you do, specifically with the public speaker program on speaking up. So we have your support there, which is incredibly valuable, Nina. So tell us how people can find you.
So yes, I'm loving being in the program, both supporting and receiving your wisdom as well. So if people want to get in touch with me, the easiest way is my website, www.ninakoo.com. I have my signature program, which is called Born to Lead, which I run live once a year, but it's also excitingly now in an on-demand version so that you can go through it at your own pace, at your own time. And I teach highly sensitive women all about their highly sensitive trait, how their physiology works, how they're wired differently, what that means in terms of things like overwhelm. And I share lots of tools and resources and tips and techniques. So it's kind of a very holistic program because ultimately we are holistic beings. So it's not just the physiology, it's also we go into much deeper things as well. So if you're interested, have a look. You can find it on my website, which was www.ninakoo.com. And I'm always happy to have a chat.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Nina. It's been lovely chatting to you. And hopefully, this is going to just help a little bit for someone. Do let us know if you have questions, comments, ideas, suggestions, fact checking, anything you want to contribute. Just put it in any comment box next to this. And if you want to get in touch, you can do so on office@eyestorm.org.uk. And we look forward to hearing from you. Have a fabulous rest of your day and week, and we'll see you soon. Thank you, Nina.
Thank you.